Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Digitally. Today, we're teasing a topic that I know is on top of many of our minds, employee experience. And as I thought about this, I wanted to bring in a guest that could approach the topic from many different dimensions. And I'm super excited to introduce you to Kirk Koeingsbauer. Now, Kirk, you'll quickly see, actually sees the whole topic from two different perspectives. First, he sees it from a leader as a user. He is a corporate vice president at Microsoft. He's chief operating officer for part of the business. He's on the board of Thomson Reuters. And from many of those experiences, he sees it the way you and I and everyone else sees it. But second, he also sees it from a builder's perspective. Kirk actually leads the product development team within Microsoft that's focused on employee experience. And so I know this session is going to be great because it'll allow us to bring in all the different perspectives. And so with that, let's get started. First things first, Kirk, welcome. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction and set up. You're more than gracious. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you here. You know, Kirk, I won't lose any time, and I'm just going to take you right to the nub of the matter. We're in the middle of the great reshuffle, if that's the right word, and we're finding the entire employer-employee contract is getting rewritten across the globe. And in the middle of all of that, employee experience is standing up to be a really important topic. But let's go back. Let's take us down to the basics. What is employee experience? Can you just even define that for us?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's become a bit of a hot topic at companies and in boardrooms, and particularly for employees. So we can spend a couple minutes on it. You know, there's actually the folks like Gartner and Forrester and other industry analysts are actually starting to define what an employee experience category is. And it's kind of interesting. It's this mix, this combo of categories that are existing or have been around for a while that are being reshaped or reformed. And then it's also new categories as well, kind of coming together in this notion of employee experience. And so things, for example, like communications, how to reach your entire employee base from the CEO on down, career and growth and development and training, and things like skills assessment. Those are things that, we've cared about for a long time, but they're becoming more and more important. The notion of things like communities and how people think about everything from, maybe it's a product company, a technical community, to things like communities for inclusion and diversity kinds of topics. Then there's things like well-being, categories like well-being are considered super, super important now, particularly given, as you mentioned, the great reshuffle or the great resignation or the great quit, whatever phrase, you see. But the notion of employee well-being is also something that's really, really key. So this is how the analysts are sort of describing it, but I actually think that it's totally righteous, but I think that there's more to it than that too. First, and you and I in the past have talked about this together, the notion of digital transformation is also just super, super key here to the notion of the employee experience. People's tool chains, the products that they use, their workflows, they have to move digital in order to have a great experience for the employee itself. And then, of course, for EXP specifically, what's changing in this category, what's making it really dynamic, is the notion that these are moving away from sort of HR-centric tools to tools that are really putting, the person at the center of the experience, the employee at the center of the experience, and the notion of making these kinds of services, sort of consumer grade, simple, easy to use services that are adding immediate value, that are self-explanatory, that are deriving, immediate impact for the employee. That's the kind of thing that's going to be really, really important to folks, or the things at least that I'm seeing.
So that's super interesting, Kirk, because I think it's a broad set of items that you brought into the fold. I mean, obviously there's purpose, there's well-being, there's health, there's inclusion, there is all of the toolkits and the componentry that you need to be more efficient, effective at what you do. There's the digital transformation of the underlying business and the processes you're working on. As you put all of that together, there is kind of that last component, which is times have changed and all of us are working from remote locations and not in team environments. And isn't that adding yet one more dimension to the challenge at hand?
It is, and it is. And I think it's one of the reasons why this topic of employee experience has become so top of mind for so many people and for so many leaders inside of organizations. And, we're in an interesting phase right now. We've been all remote, or many of us has been remote. In fact, I should actually clarify, of the roughly 160 million sort of employees in the, let's just take in the United States as an example. There's about 160 people go to work. Only about half of those people have had the opportunity to go remote. So I always like to start all of these conversations by saying, you know, for a lot of people, they're right on the front lines, and that's important. But for folks that have gone through this journey around remote, the next chapter here is hybrid. And we've actually done some research here and have sort of come across what I like to refer to as the notion of the hybrid paradox, where it's interesting. Just over 70% of people will want to have going forward the same kinds of levels of flexibility and independence that they had as they were able to work remotely. So things like not having to commute, being able to join your family for lunch, being able to have more time for self-care and working out and staying fit, being more on your own schedule and having a little more control over that. People want that and they don't want to give it up. At least a lot of them don't. But at the same time, the same population of users that we surveyed, almost another 70% said they want more in-person time. They want more collaboration time. They want more time to connect with people, to be creative, because it is a struggle to do it remotely all the time. And so this is what we like to talk about, is the notion of the hybrid paradox, where I think you can net it out. You scratch your head and go, what the heck, what do we do with that? But I think what you come down to is people are gonna just want more flexibility. And that's gonna be so, so key for the exact reason that you referenced, which is people are voting with their feet. They're quitting at higher rates than ever. It'll probably, bottom out at some point here. But we know from these same kinds of surveys that we do on the world's population of workers, that 40% of people are looking for a new job. They're looking for more, they're looking to think about changing professions. And so if we don't figure out how to do hybrid right, if we don't bring in the complexity that people want to have these benefits of being remote, but then also want to work in person together, we're going to have to figure out how to drive these kinds of flexible workplaces. And it's going to be a huge challenge for organizations. And we're going to have to really kind of lean into it and embrace it.
Feels like there's a big paradigm shift that's happening around choice, which is leading to the hybrid paradox, as you call it, and it's happening as we speak. So we've got that as a base setup, and now let's think through if that's the challenge and the opportunity ahead of us. What are some of the things you find that, and look, you're in a unique position. You are both in a large corporation. You also serve many large corporations, and you're obviously involved in the industry, and you see the developments that's happening across the industry in the area of employee experience. What are some of the things that stand out for you that are really working well, that are not working well? What can we do?
It's a great question. And I do feel like I'm in a lucky position to be able to see lots of different signal, both as someone who studies this stuff full time for my own employment, as somebody working at Microsoft in the productivity and collaboration space. But as you referenced too, we're all leaders and we're all employees, and we all see these kinds of challenges and have had our own experiences, ourselves and with our colleagues. There's maybe a couple of interesting anecdotes I can share, and I'll break them into a couple different chunks. One is around productivity itself. And this one is a tricky thing. Forever measuring productivity has been a challenging thing for organizations to do. And I will tell you, it's been one of the #1 questions I get asked all the time as someone who works on the Microsoft 365 platform from customers, which is, gosh, are we more productive or not, in this hybrid or remote world that we've been in? And here it's super interesting to see the data as well. About 45% of the employee base that we survey at Microsoft, I'll just use my own company as an example, say that they're actually more productive than they were before the pandemic through all of these tools for, again, a lot of the reasons that we've just been talking about. Now, 30% also say it's about the same, and the rest say, actually, it's less, like I'm actually less productive. But at the same time, we also see most people say, about 70% of people will say, they're spending more time working than they were before, upwards of 3 or 5 hours more a week, which may not sound a lot, but it actually is a lot when you add it up, over the course of a month or over the course of the year. And so there is some sense that there's some productivity improvement. There's some sense that there's been productivity loss, but there's clear data that suggests people are just working more, and that's leading to fatigue and challenges. And we talk about people feeling like they're in endless Zoom and Teams calls all day long, and it's true. There's just a lot more that's happening sort of after hours. And we see that, by the way, in even like some of our collaboration data. We've been studying over the course of the last year, like a lot of companies, how well are people collaborating? And Microsoft itself, Microsoft employs a 50% increase in messages, whether it's emails or Teams IMs or whatever, sent after 6 p.m. And what's scary is for managers, that's up over 300% during the pandemic. So people are time shifting work, but again, we're not all time shifting work at the same time. And so you run into these challenges where people feel like they're just always on and always getting pinged. And that's a real challenge. And overall, as much as there's so much more communication, we are seeing collaboration time at the team level dropping, typically on order of 25%. And that is causing challenges. So again, just like the hybrid paradox, we're seeing lots of different signal. And I think there's going to be a lot we're going to have to tease out over the coming months and frankly, years as we move into this hybrid world.
Kirk, that's really insightful. And I think you're in a unique position because you see a lot more data, actual data many of us get to see. So with all of that hindsight behind you, and I also, obviously one of the companies that's leading with technology innovations is yours. So you have a sense of that roadmap, if not the entire industry's roadmap, you can kind of track that. So if I put myself in your position, a year out from now, if you would be on this, what do you see coming that is going to help us with all of these things, right? Like, I mean, I listen to you and I kind of go, oh my God. So what's on the horizon? How do we nip this in the bud? How do we address this? How do we get the most out of it? Give us a couple ideas.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say, like all things in life, I think there are things that are both challenges, and then there's lots of opportunity ahead too. And so I think we have to stay and keep optimistic as we go through it. I think the number one thing that I think is going to be important for us as leaders and for us, frankly, as just employees that go to work wherever that may be, is the notion of flexibility. It's just going to be so key that leaders adopt an approach that provides flexibility as a core part of culture. Because, as you referenced at the very top of our discussion, employees are going to vote with their feet. They have options. It's definitely an employee market. And so I think that that's going to be something that's very, very core to how cultures are going to evolve. As someone who's sort of fortunate enough to have accidentally fallen into this employee experience category, I think we're going to see a lot of change over the course of the next 6 to 12 months. I know as we think about the product we build, this product called Viva that we're launching, that just really came to market in the fall, the investments that we're making in corporate learning, the investments that we're making in skills development, the investments that we're making in communications and community, the investments that we're trying to make in terms of knowledge sharing, just talking about this notion of the Great Resignation, making sure that there's transparency and access to the knowledge and information that sits inside of these organizations, given there's such churn with employees, is going to be super, super important. And I do believe, and it's interesting, I don't know about you as a leader, but I never thought I'd be talking about wellness and empathy, 10 years ago. And now I think it's just totally key for leaders. And we're going to need to provide some tooling to help people with that. Employees want more than just a paycheck in this new world. And I think it's something that we have to keep in mind. And your notion of the social contract is changing is absolutely what is going to be so important for us all to embrace.
That's fantastic, because I think partly what I'm hearing from you is, listen, the pandemic will come and it'll go. The future of work will evolve and it's here to stay. But the key thing is things like flexibility, the things like empathy and understanding and wellness. These are going to be important attributes that we must all together focus on as we collectively move forward. So those are good words of advice, Kirk. Thank you for sharing some of your insights with us. Thanks for taking the time. It's been fantastic having you here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity.